Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's our custom to go around the room and introduce ourselves before I introduce our teacher for today. So, my name is Grisha.
My name is Christian.
My name is Steve.
I'm Grant.
My name is Henry.
My name is Lucky.
I'm Lee. Jim.
I'm Maitri.
Mark.
Clint.
Stefan.
Matthew.
Jim.
Ernie.
I'm Brad. I'm Tom.
My name's Cass.
I'm Richard. I'm Tony.
Andy. Okay, and online I see Francis, and Kevin, Jim, Daniel, John, Harley, Joe, Jeffrey, Frisco, Tim, and Judges. I would like to introduce our teacher for today, Walt Opie. Walt was introduced to Insight Meditation in 1993 at Spirit Rock and attended his first residential retreat there in 2005. He's a graduate of both the Spirit Rock Community Dharma Leaders CDL4 program and the Sati Center Buddhist Chaplaincy program. Walt is a participant in the current Insight Meditation Society, IMS, teacher training program. He leads a monthly sitting group for people in recovery through IMS online. You can find out more information about his regular sit and information about him on waltopie.com. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for that introduction. Glad to be here again with you all. And I'll try to speak up. I'm somehow used to being mic'd. I have a bit of a low voice. So if you can't hear me, give me a signal. Happy to be here. And the topic that I've been kind of talking about lately is self-compassion. I thought I would just continue today. I was invited to teach through IMS online some teachings on compassion this month, actually, on self-compassion. And I'm not an expert on self-compassion, so I'm learning about it. It's a really interesting topic, though. It's not as strictly, the Buddha didn't necessarily talk about, quote, self-compassion, but he talked about compassion for a fair amount. But I think I'm going to start by reading something that I really love from Laurie Anderson. You may have heard it from this book, The Buddha is Still Teaching. Laurie Anderson is a singer, artist, writer, etc. And it's called Don't Limit Yourself. Sure. Don't limit yourself. In the Tibetan map of the world is a circle, and at the center there's an enormous mountain guarded by 4 gates. And when they draw a map of the world, they draw the map in sand, and it takes months. And then when the map is finished, they erase it, throw the sand into the nearest river. You probably heard of this. Last fall, the Dalai Lama came to New York City to do a 2-week ceremony called the Kala Chakra, which is a prayer to heal the earth. And woven into these prayers were a series of vows that he asked us to take. And before I knew it, I had taken a vow to be kind for the rest of my life. And I walked out of there and I thought, for the rest of my life? What have I done? This is a disaster. And I was really worried. Had I promised too much? Not enough? I was really in a panic. They had come from Tibet for the ceremony, and they were walking around Midtown in their new brown shoes. And I went up to one of the monks and said, can you come with me to have a cappuccino right now and talk? And so we went to this little Italian place. He had never had coffee before, so he kept talking faster and faster as I kept saying, look, I don't know whether I promised too much or too little. Can you help me, please? And he was really being practical. He said, look, don't limit yourself. Don't be so strict. Open it up. He said, the mind is a wild white horse, and when you make a corral for it, make sure it's not too small. And another thing, when your house burns down, just walk away. And another thing, keep your eyes open. And one more thing, keep moving, because it's a long way home. So, and for me, that I feel like he's talking about self-compassion there. And I love that piece. And part of self-compassion, I think, is taking ourselves lightly, a little, having a sense of humor about ourselves. There's a piece in the Dhammapada, a short passage that reads, the Dhammapada is like an ancient Buddhist text, I'm sure you're familiar, chapter 12 on oneself. And it says, if one knew oneself to be precious, one would guard oneself with care. Sages watch over themselves all through the night. Sages watch over themselves all through the night. But I think that's beautiful too. If one knew oneself to be precious, one would guard oneself with care. So there are early Buddhist texts that did encourage this kind of self-compassion. Just kind of have to read between the lines a little, maybe. And there's also this passage in Guttara Nikaya. So I should just say one of my main interests is early Buddhism. That's what I've been kind of studying a lot through Bhikkhu Inalyo, who's a German Buddhist monk, lives in Barre, Massachusetts these days, and he's a pretty interesting scholar. He's good at comparing ancient texts to try to figure out where they all agree and where they might differ. And but he pointed out this particular passage in one of his writings. He said, in this passage, the Buddha says, bhikkhus could be all of us, practitioners, followers of the Buddhist way or something. There are these 4 kinds of persons found existing in the world. What 4? Number 1, one who is practicing neither for his own welfare nor for the welfare of others. Okay. Number 2, one who is practicing for the welfare of others but not for his own welfare. Number 3, one who is practicing for his own welfare but not for the welfare of others. And 4, one who's practicing both for his own welfare and for the welfare of others. And then the Buddha says, the person practicing for his own welfare, but not for the welfare of others, is the more excellent and sublime of the first 3 persons. Which is interesting. The person practicing both for his own welfare and for the welfare of others is the foremost, the best, the preeminent, the supreme. That's kind of expected, but the slightly unexpected is that the number 3 is the one practicing for their own welfare. So Bhikkhu Inalyo, in talking about this, says the value, this gets a little technical sounding. He says the value hierarchy evident in these passages in turn circumscribes the cultivation of compassion in early Buddhist thought. It implies that compassion ideally benefits others and oneself, this being the supreme of the 4 alternatives discussed in that passage. Moreover, the compassionate concern for others should not go so far as to neglect one's own practice. To cultivate oneself what is wholesome is of such importance that this should be given priority. This is what establishes the proper foundation for then being able to benefit others as well. All right, so anyway, this is just a way of giving ourselves permission to really focus on our own practice and self-compassion, which is not to say that we don't want to ultimately be working for the benefit of others, but we kind of have to, it's the classic thing of saving ourselves first, maybe. But I think I bring this up because we can feel like self-compassion can sound a little self-involved, maybe a little something. But part of my inspiration for this talk is these troubled times, right? That this is the world feels more uncertain than it's always uncertain, but it feels even more uncertain at the moment. And every time I turn on the news, there's some new thing to lose your mind about. So I feel like self-compassion is actually a little bit of a needed balm in these times. And I also feel like compassion in general, caring about each other's suffering, feels sorely lacking in the overall discourse in our culture these days. So I just think I've taken on as a little bit my job, just try to talk about compassion in different ways. My understanding of compassion, again informed by Bhikkhu Analayo, and I think I talked about this last time I was here, but is that there's metta or loving kindness. We kind of start there, goodwill towards ourselves and all beings, and we cultivate that. And then when that goodwill, loving kindness meets suffering, then that is where compassion kind of comes in, because it's like caring about the suffering. And Bhikkhu Analayo says that the important thing is that we're focusing on wishing for, say it's another person, wishing for them to be free from the causes of their suffering. And that's where he says the emphasis can be placed for compassion practice, rather than just empathizing with how difficult whatever they're going through. Because then it can be beautiful to kind of feel their pain, but that's where you get into like compassion fatigue pretty quickly if it's just kind of ongoing and you can't help them out of it. I mean, I'm in recovery from alcoholism, drug addiction, and I've had close friends who relapsed, and I did everything I could to try to help them get back into real, recovery for their own well-being, and they just couldn't do it. And it can be kind of overwhelming because you can't stop. There's only so much I can do. So that's when also equanimity comes in, where we are the heirs of our own actions, and so is everybody else. I am, and you are. So this is. But the compassion, the way that if we focus on wishing for others to be free from the causes of their suffering, then according to Bhikkhu Analayo, we can still have joy in our own practice. We don't have to take on the other person's pain in the same way. That sounds a little selfish, but I think that's like, for example, I was helping a close friend of mine who relapsed. It didn't really do. Again, I did everything I could to try to help him, but at a certain point, he just made the choice to go down. I mean, and there was only so much I could do. So it didn't help me to just. I kind of had to save myself in that situation. It was painful, but anyway. The other thing to back up and say is that I think it all starts with mindfulness, with really being present and paying attention in the world. And that if we're really present as just naturally caring human beings, we're going to have this compassion and goodwill. I feel like we're wired for it when we're really present and we're not kind of caught up in self-involved greed, hatred, and delusion, let's say. But that's no small thing, right? Like when you look at who's running the world right now, it feels like greed, hatred, and delusion are getting the upper hand, we'll say. So part of the practice too is cleaning up our own greed, hatred, and delusion, learning how to work with that as well. All right, I hope I'm making some kind of sense. As funny, in terms of self-compassion, there's just this thing from Daniel Goleman and Tsoknyi Rinpoche, a Tibetan teacher, wrote a book called Why We Meditate, which is a pretty interesting book. Anyway, they say that the Dalai Lama had been urging psychologists to pursue this focus on a love without attachment, charity for others, for many years. Back in the 1980s, at a conference with psychotherapists, the Dalai Lama was surprised to hear that a common problem in the West was people who were self-critical, even to the point of self-loathing. In his language and in the classic languages of his tradition, Sanskrit and Pali, the word compassion included oneself. But in English, it included only other people. He said the English language needed a new word, self-compassion. This was years before an American psychologist, Kristen Neff, began her research on self-compassion. So, I don't know, I love that. And of course, I don't know if you all are aware, but there's a woman named Kristen Neff who she went to UC Berkeley and took a meditation course and was just introduced to, I think, basic mindfulness meditation and loving kindness practice. But the teacher said your loving kindness practice should include yourself. And that was surprising to her at the time, and I guess she was in a stressed out time in her life, and she started to apply it and noticed it helped her immediately when she actually started practicing this. So then she ended up doing a lot of research projects around self-compassion and has now become kind of the expert on it. Full confession, I've never actually studied directly with her, but I am going to probably quote her a little bit. Meanwhile, my wife studied with her a lot and can't believe that I'm up here talking about it. And she went to all the trouble to take all the courses. However, I feel that my own Buddhist path and recovery path has sort of put me on a path of self-compassion. I went to an alcohol drug treatment center in 1987 out of college. I graduated college and entered a graduate program in drug and alcohol, treatment, something like that. Anyway, and as I was leaving the 28-day treatment center, having found out basically, they use different language, I guess now, basically an alcoholic, and I was addicted to marijuana, weed, but I didn't think you could be addicted to that, but turns out that's not true. So anyway, I was on my way out the door and had my last meeting with my counselor, and she said, "Walt, I think you like yourself, but I don't think you love yourself. And that's my concern, is that somehow that's going to lead you to relapse and go out and drink and use more." And that really became, I really didn't even know what to do with that at the time, because, but it sort of became a mantra in a way. What would it really mean to love myself and not just so-called like myself? I'm not sure I even liked myself, to be honest. That's part of why I was drinking and drugging to the extent that I was, because the alcohol, as Dr. Gabor Mate says, we should be asking not why the addiction, but why the pain, right? And the pain for me was that I just felt very uncomfortable in the world, and alcohol really helped me feel like, okay, I can deal with this. So who knows? But so this became a bit of a mantra. What would it really mean to love myself? And I don't think that I found the solution until, as it said in my bio, I found insight meditation in 1993. Somebody took me to hear Jack Kornfield speak at Spirit Rock. I'm still grateful to that woman that I met at an art gallery in Berkeley who just happened to say, "You should come with me to hear Jack Kornfield speak at Spirit Rock." And I said, "Jack who? Spirit where?" But fortunately I went, and it did kind of change my life ultimately. But so then, many years later, I was on a retreat. It was like a 2-month retreat at Spirit Rock And I had taken, nature can be very healing, as you probably know. And at some point in that retreat, I was just wandering around in the hills above the retreat hall in Spirit Rock. If you've ever been out there, they have 300 and some acres. And I was just kind of wandering around in the hillside, and I had this I just kind of noticed, it was like a nice sunny day, I just kind of noticed this weird feeling kind of in my heart. And I thought, what the heck is this very weird, unfamiliar feeling? And I realized, it's a sense of self-love and well-being just pouring through me like it just kind of upwelled through me. It's hard to really even describe, but just was really feeling good, in a way that I don't think I necessarily had, maybe since childhood or something. And then at the end of the retreat, I was texting this guy that I was sort of mentoring in the Buddhist recovery world, and basically what I texted was, pardon the word, but this shit works. Because I came out of the 2-month retreat like feeling that, this deep sense of well-being, and like, wow, this must be what the Buddha was pointing to. I mean, obviously my meditation had blossomed, and I got very still, and things were opening and whatever, but still this beautiful feeling of self-love was there, and so I do think that that the practice naturally leads us there. And I Jack Kornfield in one of his books talks about how people go on retreat, and he watches them just kind of open to this, right? That people show up and they're kind of stressed and tight and whatever, and then over the course of, say, 10 days of meditating, sitting and walking, and maybe doing the loving kindness type of practices, they sort of soften and open and start maybe accepting themselves a little more, right? And being a little less self-critical. And you can actually start to see it on their face. They call it the Vipassana facelift. Where they're sort of glowing when they come out of there. But I ended up, part of the way that this all changed my life was I ended up getting a job at Spirit Rock for 7 years in they call it communications department. It's really, like marketing. But it was a great place to show up for work every day. And so my office was kind of at the bottom of the hill, and people would go up on retreat up near the top, closer to the top of the hill, and then the retreat would end, and they'd come down the hill, and they'd sort of pass through my sphere, and I would see them, and I remember seeing them when they arrive, and they're busy and hectic and rushing, trying not to be late or something, and then they'd come back, and they're open and just kind of like it's a whole different vibe, shall we say. And one of my buddies who had never been on a retreat, I just remember I wondered what he'd be like at the end of this kind of thing, because I wasn't sure, and I didn't see him. He got off the retreat and left, and I thought he would stop by my office, but somehow he didn't. But I go back to my car to drive home that night, and he's written a big heart on my window somehow. Maybe there was dust on the car. I just wrote a big heart, and I instantly knew it was him. I think somehow he might have signed his name. I don't remember. I knew it was him. So anyway, Christopher Germer, so there's another self-compassion person that started working with Kristen Neff. And he has a book called The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. He says the best way to understand self-compassion practice is that by doing it, we're strengthening the wish to alleviate our own suffering. From this basic desire arise countless practical ways of taking care of ourselves. Self-compassion feels good when we practice it wisely, and the more we do, the more we want to do it. Over time, a positive cycle develops, strengthening and deepening the initial motivation to practice. And then he says, we just need to start somewhere. So maybe you'll be inspired to start after today, I don't know. But then it's funny, for some reason, I'm riffing a little, but when I saw his use of the word just, I remembered this video I saw recently from a motivational speaker or something, Mel Robbins, who's a woman, Mel Robbins, and she's talking about the Nike Just Do It slogan. And she says, what's the most important word in the slogan, just do it? Why is that such a successful slogan? And people tend to say do because you're doing something. She says, no, the most important word is the just. She says, Nike is acknowledging a universal problem that every human being has. It's a moment of hesitation. The just acknowledges that you're standing on the sideline of life. The just acknowledges that you're watching the game and they're saying, I see you doubting yourself. I see you hesitating. I see that you're a little bit afraid. I see you standing there holding yourself back. They're inviting you to step off the sidelines of life and step onto the field. Just do it acknowledges your humanity. They're seeing your potential. They're seeing the possibility that gets wasted when you question and hold yourself back. All that just on that word, just. But I just thought that was interesting. And I think there's compassion in that, right? So Kristen Neff talks about the three components of self-compassion or mindful self-compassion. And one of them is the idea of our shared humanity. We're not the only one. We're not alone. Somebody else asked, who in this world do we know that doesn't struggle with self-judgment at some time or self-criticism? So when we see that everybody, like most people tend to suffer from that at some point, in some way, this can really open the heart to self-compassion. So Kristen Neff says this requires feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated and alienated by our suffering. So that's one of the components. Another component is self-directed kindness. So that's the obvious one. Metta for ourselves, loving kindness for ourselves. This requires that we be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than harshly critical and judgmental. And then the third one is mindfulness. Third component of self-compassion is mindfulness. We can use it to work with those negative voices in our head. So Kristen Neff says this requires that we hold our experience in balanced awareness rather than ignoring our pain or exaggerating it. So it's kind of interesting that part of mindfulness's purpose is to not exaggerate the pain, but to keep it in balance. But also not to ignore it. So we notice it. Mindfulness notices it, doesn't exaggerate it, but fully acknowledges it and helps us start to work with it. Let's see. One thing is I'm not sure how much time I have.
I have till about 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Okay, thanks. So part of my story too is that I grew up playing sports, and I played tennis because my mom basically didn't have a job. She was a homemaker or whatever, but her full-time job seemed to be playing tennis all the time.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I started playing tennis, but I had this very self-critical streak, and so it's my own worst enemy on the tennis court. And I did play on the high school tennis team. I was not by any means the best player on the tennis team, but I did really enjoy it. There was something about it that spoke to me. And interestingly enough, the first person to ever kind of give me a Buddhist book was my high school tennis coach, Steve Moore, who I still appreciate for that. And he, one thing that happened was I was all set for my senior year on the tennis team, and I was really excited. I've been like practicing with a coach, or like a one-on-one coach, and I thought I was like really going to shake up the order of the tennis team that year. And then I went skiing the night before the season opened. May have smoked a little weed, and then went down the slope and crashed really dramatically. And then but then popped up and thought, oh, actually, I can't believe I'm not badly injured from that, because I really had a big... And then I went to pick up my ski pole, and found out that my right thumb the bone had snapped in half, and somehow I didn't feel it until I tried to use it. It was kind of weird. This doctor just appeared on the slope and said, "Hi, I'm a doctor. That was a pretty bad fall. Are you okay?" And I said, "Other than my thumb," and then he looked at it and was like, "Oh my goodness. I'll set that for you on the slope, but you need to go to a doctor," because it was dangling. It was sorry. So anyway, this doctor sort of set it on the slope, and then I had to end up getting pins in my thumb. But so then my tennis coach, I basically said I had a giant cast on my hand. He said, "Well, can you play left-handed?" I was like, "No, I'm not ambidextrous that way." So he ended up giving me the Alan Watts book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, which was my first sort of serious Buddhist book that I tried to understand. And I just remember, I don't really think I got it, but I just thought it was so interesting that there could be wisdom in insecurity. So in terms of the self-critical aspect, I would play tennis tournaments and I would maybe be, even with the other player, but somehow my self-critical mode would often kick in and I would kind of choke and lose, right? And that just happened a lot. And it was pretty painful. I kind of really suffered over it. So I kind of stopped playing tennis or anything like that for many years, got into this insight meditation practice quite deeply, and then at some point, just for health reasons, I started to think I might need to get more active because it's a lot of sitting, right? So anyway, my mother, meanwhile, said, "You should play pickleball. You would really like it." And long story short, it took me a while, but after her saying that for over a year, I said, "All right, I'm going to try this pickleball." Anyway, so long story short, now I would be playing pickleball right now if it weren't for this. I've really been enjoying pickleball. But the point of it is, it's really fascinating to be able to go back to this kind of thing I guess I'll have to claim some wisdom, right? That and self-compassion. That now when I can play this kind of sport, and I don't have to beat myself up if I miss a shot in pickleball, right? And people do say, "Oh, it's just pickleball," all the time, which I do love about pickleball. But still, the old me would have still found a way to be very self-critical, and it's been really just healing for me to. I think it's a form of self-compassion for me to play this sport, not beat myself up, and then it's so interesting because I go to these courts and they have a beginner court, some intermediate courts, and advanced courts. And it's kind of like I'm very comfortable on the intermediate court, and then there's the thought, do I dare ever play on the advanced court, And then, so long story short, I've been recently playing on the advanced court. And honestly, if it weren't for this practice, I don't think that I would deem myself worthy to play on the advanced court. But I've been able to play on the advanced court and not think I don't belong. So it's just really interesting when we can find some way to really test, like, have I actually grown at all from all this practice? Has anything changed? And I really feel that it has for me in this way. So there's some quote that I really want to read from Kristen Neff, and I apologize, it just seems to have be hiding from me at the moment.
Maybe you can paraphrase it.
Yeah, I'll try to paraphrase it. Basically, she says that she realized that all of the self-criticism that she did only made things worse. Like all this beating ourselves up. Somehow we're beating ourselves up thinking it's going to make me better, right? But when you really, with mindfulness, see beating myself up only makes me tighten up and makes me worse in whatever way, then you can drop it because you just realize it's not valuable. And But what's also interesting is it zaps motivation because we're scared of failing. And so that when we can practice self-compassion and stop beating ourselves up, it actually frees us up to try difficult things, to take on more. Like for me, trying out the advanced court in pickleball, which admittedly sounds a little ridiculous, but there is something to that where, it just opens us up to try these new things that may be difficult because we know we don't have to beat ourselves up if we fail. But hey, we could even pat ourselves on the back that we tried. And so just thought that was a poignant quote that I didn't bring. But I don't know how it got lost in the note compiling. Anyways, but then I'll end with this. A quote from Pema Chodron in her book, I think it's a fairly recent book called Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change. Pema Chodron writes, when life is uncomfortable and we're highly agitated and don't know where to turn, that's the most difficult time to stay present. But that's also the time when doing so can be the most rewarding. It's a challenge to practice staying present when we're despondent or distressed or overwhelmed, when our backs are against the wall. But right then, when we're in a tight spot, we have the ideal situation for practice. We can do something radical, accept suffering as part of our home ground, part of our enlightened mandala, and relate to it straightforwardly. We don't awaken in some paradise where the circumstances are made to order, she says. We awaken in the charnel ground. But I think that's a powerful. We don't awaken in some paradise where the circumstances are made to order. We awaken in the charnel ground. So may that be true for us in these times, which feel a little like the charnel ground at times. I guess that's enough out of me for the moment. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to open it up and hear from you all. In the back, yes, please.
Hi, Walt. I'm Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Thanks for a lovely talk. I sort of latched on to what you said early on. I think it was Bhikkhu Analayo who said, focusing on, like, sending compassion to somebody, but focusing on the causes, may they be free of the causes and conditions.
Yeah.
So not just like, oh, poor them, because, the near enemy of compassion is pity.
Right.
And I often look at that, like, can I have compassion for someone without, like, oh, poor them. Like, oh, you poor lost soul. Oh, you stupid idiot. Whatever. I guess I can get judgmental. But I think that's so important. Like, I saw, I think it was a book title. Like, instead of focusing on what's wrong with you, the title of the book, I think, was What Happened to You? Right? So looking at those circumstances and conditions that give rise to things, because when I see that in someone else, it opens me to compassion, because then I can say, well, if I had those same circumstances, if I experienced what they experienced, if I was treated the way they were treated, I'd probably be the same. And I think that's true compassion. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an undercurrent in your talk, and that is like decoupling self-compassion from our judgment and criticism that we heap on ourselves. And I think that's kind of a key to it. So thanks for highlighting all that.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. That's I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a wonderful talk, and I hope you don't put yourself up for not finding that passage. I think your talk is particularly germane. Well, I know we all deal with the issue. I mean, I think for a room full of gay men, it's a really important message. I think we have a distinction among other marginalized communities in the sense that if you're an African American, there's racism, but you grow up in a black family with a black community usually around you and so on. And being a gay man, I grew up with a heterosexual family, but I was heterosexual. And at a very young age, you take in messages. And message, and again, because most of us were seniors, we were young and very unenlightened, much more unenlightened, if it's hard, if you can believe that, much more unenlightened than now. And it's really easy to interiorize those voices at a very impressionable age and just carry them. And I know I do that too. And I'm aware of myself doing it, so some way I don't buy into it like I used to. But I still have those voices that call me names and put me down inside my head. And I just realized I got these from being a young gay boy. And such an important message to learn that we have to uneducate ourselves about untrain ourselves about self-hatred. And it's a very important message. So thank you for talking about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that in. One of the things Christopher Germer talks about is how we can have these unconscious bad habits that we don't notice. And like you're saying, that so we kind of need to bring the practice to them and notice them and shed light on them, and like you're saying, try to unwind them, not keep repeating them. His example was, notice how you brush your teeth. Do you brush your teeth like harshly? Are we scrubbing the teeth, or are we gently just trying to really make sure our teeth are nice and clean? I thought that was an interesting reminder. Not to make trivia, but just as an example. That's even when I go on retreat, I notice that things change just about the way I care for myself on retreat. Maybe because you're slowed down, you're paying more attention. But yeah, thank you for bringing that in. I mean, I was thinking this, just having a gay Buddhist fellowship, there's compassion right there already built into it. So it's beautiful. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thanks for your talk. I got to 12-step recovery about the time you did, and couldn't identify much self-love in myself. I had a lot of kind of brittle pride. It was false pride. But fortunately, I ended up at a retreat run by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and right off the bat, she started us singing songs like "I Love Myself the Way I Am," and nothing I would change. She had us looking in the mirrors and telling ourselves we love each other, we love ourselves. And I've been doing that for the last almost 40 years. So I do that every time I run across the mirror. I just look at myself and I wig out on how much I love myself. Now that's positive, happy talk, a lot of it sometimes, but it's changing the circuits in my brain. But I also got to Al-Anon about the same time, and so I learned about rescuing behavior, which is what I was taught to rescue my parents at age 8. So I have to be on the lookout for that, because that's not compassion. That's trying to manipulate the environment so that I can get my needs met, which is not a bad thing to do. But it's I have to be suspicious of sometimes, because if I'm rescuing you, I have a lot of things that I get back from that. Like I can be superior, I can know what you need. I don't have to think about myself. So those are all things I prefer than being just lonely and empty and whatever, having real feelings. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Yes, please.
Yeah. And hearing you speak, well, thank you for talking. And hearing you speak, I was thinking like, there's almost like various forms of self-compassion. So there's like self-compassion, like I was thinking like in my early 20s, like understanding that there were things I couldn't grasp, or like coming face to face to my shortcomings, things that I realized like I don't either have the physical ability for this, or like my mental capacity isn't there yet. But then there's also like the self-compassion, like you said, to like push yourself and try new things, or allowing yourself like, yes, maybe I can raise up to that level, and then realizing that yes, I could. And then there was the other self-compassion, which had to do, I forget what it was, but it circled back to me like letting go, kind of like when you said about your passage, and like not beating yourself up. Like that was a good practice, like not being so critical of yourself, but I think it circled back to like letting go, which I think is one of like quintessential to the practices, right?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So Bhikkhu Analayo, what is it? Letting go or not clinging to anything. That the ultimate goal of practice, he summed it up as keep calmly knowing change and never cling to anything. But yeah, letting go is a big part of the not clinging. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone online have a question? Comments?
Or comment, sharing.
Give you the power back to unmute. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up then, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
I just would say that if this topic does interest you, I would recommend the work of, as I said, Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer. This book, which does have a lot of just tips on how to practice self-compassion and different ways to do it. And so if you're interested, I just recommend it. All right, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Announcements?
Yes, November 23rd, we're having a day-long sit here with David Moreno. Please go to the website to sign up, or you don't get lunch because we don't know you're coming. You just have to watch everybody else eat.
Well, I'm going to give the same pitch I give every weekend. Attention, probably get a little bored of it. But we have resumed doing our monthly dinner at the Larkin Street Youth Center. It's a homeless shelter for young people with cutoff ages like around 22. For 9 years before COVID, we did a dinner there once a month, and it was very well received, and it was great fun for us, and all these young people just really enjoyed the food. It's a wonderful place, but because of budget concerns, the meals are very simple. So this is one chance to give them, these young people, this really good homemade comfort food meal. So if you're interested in participating in, contact me or some of the steering committee members, and we add you to the list. And you're not signing your life away. You don't have to. You don't have to be there every month, but you're just on the list of people, of volunteers that we can contact when we're getting a meal together. It's fun, and I hope you people will consider, being part of that.
Thank you. Host?
Before we get to the host, okay, I have two announcements. Yes, we are an all-volunteer organization, and this year we have two sets of shoes to fill, all around our newsletter, which our quarterly newsletter with the printed version goes mostly out to incarcerated individuals. And so Michael Murphy, who's been coordinating the editing of it, is stepping down. This November mailing will be his last, as well as Jack Busby, who puts together the kind of the physical mailing itself, having the labels printed out, ensuring that the right amount of newsletters are printed, getting the envelope stamps and all of that together so that we can physically mail them. And the mailing job is something that could be split up between 2, even 3 people. So if you are interested in it all, you can contact Jack Busby or Michael Murphy or myself or anybody on the board here. But yes, we'd love to know who's going to be taking on this job within the next month or so. Would be great. And then also a big opportunity for some engaged Buddhism coming up next weekend with the No Kings March. This year, rather than this time it's the march is congregating at Sue Bierman Park, which is just towards towards Fisherman's Wharf on the Valancourt Fountain, and I've gone ahead. I've just decided to that there's a playground there. There's a play structure, a dome-like jungle gym structure at Sue Bierman Park, and I'm just going to say, let's if you're interested in marching as a group, we'll congregate there at 1:30. The march begins at 2 o'clock. I'll send out an email to our group email with like a picture of the structure and everything so that people can meet there at 1:30, and we can, and then maybe, afterwards you can head over to the Barrison Fair, street fair.
The big red jungle gym.
Yeah.
I'm the host today, so please stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. And there are a bunch of vegan treats and some hot water for tea. And if you have tea, just put your cup in the sink before leaving, and take care of it. I'll be circulating with the Dana bowl, Dana being the Pali word for generosity, and that's how we pay for the center and offer Dana to our speakers, pay for the printing of the newsletter and the food for the Larkin Street dinners. And as well, scholarships for people to enable people who can't otherwise attend our retreats to be able to attend our retreats. There's a sign-up sheet if you want to be added to our mailing list. It's on the credenza just next to some of the trees. And around 12:30, some people go out to lunch, and they gather at the front door, and anybody's welcome to join for that.
Thank you. Yes?
Another opportunity for engaged Buddhism. Since August, every Thursday there's been an interfaith vigil in front of one of the ice courts. It's 6:30 Sansam, and it's 12 to 1. Sometimes some of the religious leaders speak. I've never heard of Buddhist. So we could go and meditate there or just be there.
Thank you.
12 to 1 on Thursdays, is that right?
Yeah, 6:30 Sansam.
Next Thursday?
Every Thursday.
I'm sorry, what's time again?
12 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. Any other announcements? Next week is Eve Decker next week, so come sing along. All right, well, let's gather for our dedication Walt, do you have one, or do you want us to use our regular one?
I'd like to hear your regular one if you don't mind.
Okay. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be freed from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that is. Thank you all.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.